They say castles belong in fairy tales, not in the hands of a man sleeping in his car with his 8-year-old daughter. But when the certified letter arrived at the shelter, forwarded 3 times, crumpled and coffee-stained, it carried news that defied every assumption I'd made about my life. My grandfather, a man I'd met twice as a child, had died 18 months prior. The Scottish Estate Executor's Office regretted the delay. I was the sole heir to Blackthorn Keep, a 16th-century tower house in the Highlands 4 hours north of Edinburgh. The property came with 200 years of unpaid council taxes, structural condemnation notices, and a roof the surveyor's report described as actively collapsing. Emma looked at the grainy photograph paper-clipped to the documents. Gray stone walls thick as a car, arrow slits for windows, ivy climbing like green flames. "Is that ours?" she whispered. I wanted to say no. I wanted to fold the papers back into the envelope and return to the familiar arithmetic of survival. Which church served dinner on Thursdays? Which parking lot security wouldn't knock after midnight? How to stretch 3 pounds until the weekend. But Emma's eyes held something I hadn't seen in months. Not hope exactly, but possibility. The kind that makes a child believe her father still knows how to fix things. The executor's note was blunt. Accept the inheritance and assume all debts and responsibilities, or disclaim within 30 days and the property would revert to the crown. There was no money. The castle generated no income. It was, in every legal and practical sense, a magnificent burden. But it had walls. It had a roof, however compromised, and it had been built by hands that shared my blood, for reasons I'd never been told. My grandfather had kept his past locked away like the tower itself, sealed behind silence and an ocean's distance. Now he'd left me the key, along with the question of whether I was fool enough to use it. We flew on budget tickets I couldn't afford, Emma clutching a backpack containing everything we owned that mattered. When the taxi dropped us at the gravel lane 3 miles from the nearest village, I understood why the executor had been so eager to wash his hands of the place. Blackthorn Keep rose from overgrown pasture like a broken tooth, its stones dark with damp, its single intact turret listing slightly westward. The main hall's roof had partially caved. The courtyard was a jungle of bramble and saplings. But the walls, those brutal 3-foot-thick walls, they stood. They'd stood for 500 years. Maybe they'd stand a little longer. Chapter 1. The Key That Opened Nothing. The executor's packet contained 3 keys, none of which fit the main door. I stood in the courtyard while rain began to patter against stone. Emma huddled under my jacket and tried each key in the rusted iron lock. The door itself was medieval oak, swollen with moisture, held shut by a padlock someone had added in the last century. The keys were older: church key, skeleton key, something that looked like it belonged to a music box. None matched the modern lock. "Maybe we're supposed to go through a window," Emma suggested. The arrow slits were 8 inches wide. The ground floor windows, the few that still had glass, were barred with iron grills set into the masonry. I walked the perimeter, boots squelching through wet grass, looking for weakness. The north wall showed fire damage, black scoring that climbed 20 feet. The west turret door hung half off its hinges. I pulled it open, metal shrieking. The smell hit first: wet stone, bird droppings, something sweetly rotten underneath. The turret staircase spiraled up into darkness, stone steps worn concave by centuries of feet. But there was also a doorway at the base, leading into the main keep. I tried the keys again. The skeleton key slid home. The lock turned with a sound like grinding teeth. The door opened on a great hall that made my chest tighten. Vaulted ceiling 40 feet overhead, stone ribs arching like a whale's skeleton. Half the slate tiles were missing. Rain dripped through into puddles that reflected gray sky. The floor was flagstone, uneven and slick. Against the far wall stood a massive fireplace, its mantel carved with a coat of arms I didn't recognize: 3 ravens and a mountain. Furniture lay in rotted heaps, bird nests built on collapsed chairbacks. Graffiti tagged one wall: Jamie plus Moira, 1987. "It's like a museum," Emma breathed. "A dead museum." I found a camping lantern in the taxi driver's lost and found bin he'd sold me for 2 pounds. Its LED glow pushed back the gloom. The hall had 2 doorways. One led to what might have been a kitchen, the other to a passage toward the ruined wing. I chose the kitchen. Safer to learn the intact spaces first. The kitchen was medieval: stone sink, iron hooks in the ceiling beams, a bread oven built into the wall. But someone had modernized it, probably in the 1960s. There was a cast iron stove, rust-frozen, A single working tap that spat brown water when I tried it, and under a canvas tarp, invisible until I'd nearly walked past it, a stack of wooden crates. I pulled the tarp back. 5 crates, each stamped with Blackthorn Estate, private. The top one wasn't nailed shut. Inside, ledgers, dozens of them, leather-bound, pages dense with spidery handwriting. The dates ran from 1823 to 1949. Below the ledgers, wrapped in oilcloth, photographs, receipts, letters tied with string. Emma tugged my sleeve. "Dad, look." She pointed to the kitchen wall. Someone had carved words into the stone, crude letters filled with old soot. "What we built, we owe. What we owe, we remember." The lantern flickered. Somewhere above us, something heavy shifted, and dust sifted down through the broken ceiling. This place wasn't safe. The surveyor had been clear. Structural failure imminent. Do not occupy. But the keys had opened the door. The crates had been waiting, and the words on the wall felt like an instruction, or a warning. I picked up the first ledger. The cover read, 1823, year of the clearing. I opened it to a page marked with a dried flower, preserved like a fossil between the leaves. The entry was dated March 15, 1823. Today we gave shelter to the McGregor family, evicted from Glencoe. 14 souls. They arrived with nothing. By nightfall we had space in the West Wing, bread from our stores and blankets donated by the village. This is the work. This is why the keep was built. Not for pride, but for mercy. Let those who come after remember. Wealth measures itself in who you house when the storm rises. Outside the rain strengthened. Emma stood close, reading over my shoulder. I felt the weight of it then. Not the inheritance, but the expectation. This wasn't a ruin passed down by accident. It was a test wrapped in stone and time. "Dad?" Emma's voice was small. "Are we staying?" The roof groaned. Water dripped. I thought of the car, the shelters, the narrow beds and thin soup. I thought of my grandfather, who'd crossed an ocean and never mentioned this place, who'd left it to me without explanation. "Yeah," I said, "we're staying." Chapter 2. The Promise in the Stones. The first night we slept in the kitchen, our sleeping bags spread on flagstones that radiated cold like meat locker walls. I wedged the door shut with a broken chair leg and kept the lantern burning low. Emma fell asleep quickly, exhausted from travel and rain. I lay awake, listening to the castle breathe, wind through arrow slits, timbers settling, something, rats probably, scratching in the walls. The place was alive in a way buildings shouldn't be. It resisted sleep. At dawn I made an inventory. The keep had 4 levels if you counted the turret. Ground floor, great hall, kitchen, 2 storage rooms, a privy that was mercifully separate from the living spaces. First floor, 3 chambers, their doors intact but floors questionable. Second floor, partially collapsed, too dangerous to explore without equipment. The turret, accessible but narrow, leading to a parapet where the crenellations had crumbled to stumps. Water came from the kitchen tap, brown but cold. No electricity, no heat except what we could build in the great hall fireplace. If I could clear the chimney without bringing down the remaining roof. The village was 3 miles away across open moor. I had £37 in cash, Emma's school enrollment paperwork from London, now irrelevant, and a mobile phone with spotty signal that pinged only near the turret's top. Emma woke and found me in the great hall pulling moldy cushions from a window seat. "What's the plan?" she asked. I'd been asking myself the same thing. The council taxes amounted to £14,000, accumulating interest. The condemnation notice gave me 90 days to make minimum repairs or face demolition orders. Even if I could work miracles, I'd need materials, expertise, legal counsel, all of which required money I didn't have. But the ledgers offered something else, a pattern. I'd read 3 more volumes by lantern light. Every entry told the same story. Families taken in, debts forgiven, labor exchanged for shelter. The Blackthorn Keep of the 19th century had been a sanctuary, run by my ancestors with meticulous care. They'd recorded every name, every transaction, every favor traded, and in the margins occasionally there were notes. Repaid by James McGregor, September 1825. 2 sheep and help rebuilding the stable. The widow Campbell offered 6 weeks weaving in exchange for winter lodging. It was a gift economy, pre-modern and strangely functional. The keep had survived not through wealth but through reciprocity. "We're going to fix it," I told Emma. 1 room at a time. Her eyebrows went up. "How?" "We ask for help." The village of Kilmartin was a single street of gray stone shops. Post office, pub, general store, Butcher. I walked in with Emma, aware of how we looked. Rumpled, foreign, out of place. The post office clerk was a woman in her 60s, sharp-eyed and unsmiling. I'm looking for someone who might remember Blackthorn Keep, I said. I've inherited it. I'm trying to understand its history. She studied me. You're the American grandson. Yes. You've got your grandfather's jaw. He left here in '55, swore he'd never return. She paused. The keep's been empty 40 years. What makes you think you can change that? I don't know if I can, I admitted, but I'm going to try. Her expression softened, just slightly. Talk to Duncan McLeish. He's at the pub most afternoons. His grandfather worked at the keep before it closed. He might have stories. Duncan McLeish was 73, broad-shouldered despite his age, with hands that looked like they'd shaped every stone in the village. He listened to my situation over a pint I couldn't afford to buy, but he insisted on purchasing. The keep was more than a house, he said finally. It was covenant. Your great-great-grandfather built that reciprocity into the bones of the place. Every family around here has a story. Someone sheltered, someone saved, but your grandfather, he trailed off. He saw it differently, saw it as obligation, not honor. He walked away from all of it. Why? That, Duncan said, is a question for the stones themselves. But if you're serious about restoration, you'll need more than good intentions. You'll need the village's trust, and that's been in short supply where Blackthorn's concerned. He gave me 3 names, a roofer who might work on credit, a solicitor who specialized in heritage properties, and a woman who ran a historical preservation society. Start with the roof, he advised. Everything else is negotiable, but if the roof fails, the keep becomes rubble. Walking back across the moor, Emma asked, Do you think they'll help us? I don't know, I said. The wind cut through my jacket. The castle appeared on the horizon, dark against darker clouds. But we have to give them a reason to believe it matters. That night I read more ledgers. I found the entry from 1955, the year my grandfather left. It was written in different handwriting, probably his father's. Thomas has departed for America. He believes the old ways are done, that charity is weakness. I have failed to show him that keeping faith is the only wealth that compounds across generations. May he find whatever he seeks. May he not forget what he leaves behind. I closed the ledger. Around me the castle creaked and settled. I thought about faith and memory, and the weight of a promise you inherit before you understand what it means. Emma was already asleep. I spread my own sleeping bag closer to hers and lay down on cold stone, listening to the place that had chosen to be ours, whether we were ready or not. Chapter 3. Names carved in oak. The roofer arrived on the 3rd morning, driving a mud-splattered truck loaded with tarps and rope. His name was Callum, 40-something, weathered and skeptical. He circled the keep twice before speaking. This is worse than Duncan described, he said flatly. The west wing is past saving. The main hall might hold if we stabilize the trusses and patch the slate gaps. Might. What do you need? I asked. He rattled off a list. Scaffolding, replacement slates, timber for bracing, tar paper, flashing, labor. At the end, he named a figure that was triple what I could imagine scraping together. I can't pay that, I said. Not up front. Callum's face hardened. Then you can't save the keep. I thought of the ledgers, of the careful accounting of debts and labor. What if we worked it differently? I can't give you money now, but I can give you something else. Like what? I didn't have an answer yet, but Emma did. She'd been exploring the courtyard and came running with something clutched in her hand. A rusted horseshoe so old the nail holes had worn through. Dad, there's stuff everywhere, under the weeds. Old tools, iron pieces, stuff people probably want. Callum took the horseshoe, turned it over. 18th century, he murmured. Maybe earlier. An idea crystallized. What if we documented everything we find, made the keep a historical site? You'd get publicity, credit for the restoration work. When we stabilize it, when we start bringing people through, historians, preservationists, your name would be attached. It was a thin offer, built on air and optimism. But Callum studied the horseshoe, then looked up at the tower. My grandfather helped maintain this place, he said quietly, before it closed. He always said the keep deserved better than rot. He sighed. I'll do the emergency patches. Enough to keep weather out of the main hall, but you'll owe me the rest when you can pay. And if this place collapses around you, that debt dies with you. Clear? Clear. He started work that afternoon, Emma helping haul tarps while I began a systematic exploration of the rooms we could safely access. The Great Hall revealed its secrets slowly. Graffiti dated back to the 1700s, Names scratched into window frames. John Murray Mason, 1734. Alice MacLeod taught reading here, 1802. The walls were a census of lives, a record written in boredom and pride and the human need to say, I was here. In the first-floor chambers, I found furniture too damaged to save but interesting enough to photograph. A bed frame carved with thistles, a desk with a hidden drawer that stuck until I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside, letters, dozens of them, bundled with ribbon so old it disintegrated when I touched it. The letters were addressed to the Keeper of Blackthorn, written between 1890 and 1920, requests for shelter, for arbitration of disputes, for witness to marriages and births. The keep had been more than a house. It had been an institution, a courthouse and sanctuary combined. One letter, dated 1912, read, My husband has cast me out with our 3 children. I have nowhere to go. The village says you are a hard man but a fair one. I ask only for winter shelter and I will work. I can cook, clean, mend, please, in the name of what Blackthorn stands for. There was no record of a response, but a note in my great-grandfather's handwriting was clipped to the letter. Margaret Reed, accepted November 1912, stayed 4 months, helped deliver the Walsh baby January 13th, remarried to James Curran, April 13th, debt forgiven. Emma found me crying. I didn't realize I was until she touched my arm. Dad? These people, I managed. They had nothing, and someone gave them a chance. She sat beside me on the dusty floor. Around us, the castle held its breath. Rain had started again, but Callum's tarps kept it from the worst of the damage. The dripping had slowed to a rhythm, almost musical. Is that why Grandpa left? Emma asked. Because it was too much? Maybe, I said. Or maybe he thought the world had moved on. That this kind of thing didn't matter anymore. Does it? She asked. Matter? I thought about the shelter circuits, the way people became invisible when they had no address, no proof they belonged anywhere. I thought about the caseworkers who tried to help and the systems that ground them down. I thought about Emma, asking if we were staying and what it meant to say yes to a place that was fundamentally about saying yes to people who needed it. I think it's the only thing that does matter, I said. By evening, Callum had covered the worst roof gaps. The great hall felt less like a cave and more like a room. Still damaged, still vast, but contained. He climbed down from his ladder, wiping his hands. You'll need heat before the real cold hits, he said. That fireplace chimney is clogged with centuries of soot and probably bird nests. But there's a sweep in Fort William who might help. Tell him I sent you. Thank you, I said. He nodded, then paused. My grandfather kept a journal about working here. I haven't looked at it in years, but if you're serious about understanding this place, maybe it would help. I could bring it by. I'd appreciate that. After he left, Emma and I sat in the kitchen, eating tinned soup heated on a camp stove I'd bought with the last of our cash. The rain continued, but it stayed outside now. The walls held. For the first time in 6 months, we slept under shelter that felt like it could last, even if only for a night. If you're enjoying this journey so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Chapter 4. Hands That Remember. The chimney sweep arrived a week later and confirmed our fears. 3 centuries of soot, 2 intact bird nests, and what appeared to be several centuries' worth of stones that had fallen from the interior wall. He spent 2 days disassembling the blockage, brick by brick, while Emma and I worked on clearing the courtyard. The courtyard revealed itself like an archaeological dig. Beneath bramble and saplings we found cobblestones, hand-laid, fitted without mortar, still level after 500 years. We found the remains of what must have been a garden, rose stems thick as my wrist, berry canes gone wild, herb beds marked by limestone borders. Emma discovered a well, its wooden cover rotted through but the stone shaft intact. I dropped a pebble and counted, 3 seconds before the splash. Fresh water, I said. Underground. Can we use it? Emma asked. Maybe. If we can clean it, get a bucket system working. It would be medieval, drawing water by rope and windlass, but it would be ours. No water bill. No dependency on the village tap that sometimes ran dry. The thought felt like wealth. Duncan McLeish visited on the 8th day, bringing his grandfather's journal and a thermos of hot tea that Emma accepted with gratitude bordering on worship. We sat in the great hall, now minimally weatherproof, and he opened the journal to a page marked with a playing card, the 9 of Hearts. August 1947, he read aloud. The keep opens its doors again. The war is over, but hunger remains. Today we housed 6 families, displaced by the evictions in Sutherland. Tomorrow we'll need flour, bedding, and the cooperation of the village. The laird reminds us, we are not doing charity, we are honoring contract. Every stone in this keep was laid by labor given freely, in exchange for protection when protection matters most. The laird, I said. That was my great-grandfather? Aye, Thomas's father, the last one who truly understood what the keep meant. Duncan flipped through pages. Here, this is the part I thought you'd want to see. The entry was dated September 1955. Thomas departed this morning. He believes America offers more than stones and duty. Perhaps he's right, but I fear he's traded belonging for opportunity, and will spend his life realizing the cost. I've sealed the family papers in the Undercroft, with instructions that whoever comes next should know what we built and why. The keep will wait. It's patient. Stone is. The Undercroft, I said. Where's that? Duncan smiled. Beneath you. Every keep of this era has one. Cold storage, root cellar, sometimes a strong room. Your main hall will have an access hatch somewhere, probably covered by centuries of dirt and furniture. We found it an hour later once we knew to look. An iron ring set flush with flagstones, hidden beneath what had been a rug so rotted only its outline remained in mildew. The hatch was 3 feet square, heavy oak bound with iron straps. It took both Duncan and me to lift it. Stone steps descended into darkness. The smell was damp earth and old stone, but not decay. I went first with the lantern, Duncan following, Emma staying topside as anchor. The Undercroft was a single vaulted chamber, maybe 15 feet square with walls carved from bedrock. Against one wall, wooden shelves, surprisingly intact, and on the shelves, boxes, dozens of them. Metal document boxes, the kind designed to survive fire and flood. I pulled one down. The label read Estate Records, 1850-1875. Another, Correspondence and Letters of Intent. A third, Building Plans and Surveys. Your family archive, Duncan breathed. I'll be damned. The old laird really did seal everything away. At the back of the chamber, set into the wall, a wooden chest, iron-banded, with a lock that matched one of my keys. The church key I'd thought useless. I tried it. The lock turned. Inside, more ledgers, but also bundles of documents tied with waxed string. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, apprenticeship papers, a record of every person who'd lived under this roof, worked these grounds, made the keep their sanctuary, and beneath those, wrapped in oilcloth, photographs. I lifted them carefully. The oldest was a tintype from the 1860s, the keep in its prime, roof intact, smoke rising from chimneys, people gathered in the courtyard. The caption, in faded ink, Harvest Festival, 1867, 63 souls in residence, 63. The keep had housed 63 people. I thought of the survey report, the condemnation notice the structural engineer who'd written demolition recommended. This place had held lives, plural and continuous, for centuries. Now it barely held 2. We need to stabilize the floors, I said. If we're going to house people again. Whoa, Duncan interrupted. You're not thinking of reopening it as a shelter? Why not? The words came out defensive but also certain. Isn't that what it was built for? Lad, the legal requirements alone. He stopped, seeing my face. You're serious. The village must have people who need help, the way the whole country does. Duncan was quiet for a long moment. Then, Callum mentioned you've got a strange way of thinking about debt. I'm starting to understand what he meant. He looked around the Undercroft, at the archive of hope and documentation. If you're truly doing this, you'll need more than repairs. You'll need inspections, insurance, modern facilities, bathrooms that aren't medieval garderobes, heat, safety certificates. So it's impossible. I didn't say that. He smiled. I said it requires coordination, and it happens there's a woman in the village who spent 20 years trying to establish a community housing trust. She's brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. Her name's Fiona Buchanan. If anyone can help navigate the bureaucracy, it's her. Will she help? That, Duncan said, depends on whether you can convince her this isn't just another wealthy incomer's restoration project. I looked at the photographs, at the faces of people who'd found refuge in stone and honor. I'm not wealthy, I said, and this isn't about me. Then you might just have a chance. We climbed back to the main hall, carrying a box of documents each. Emma helped us stack them on the window seat, now cleared of rot. The afternoon light slanted through arrow slits, painting golden bars across stone. The keep felt less empty than it had, less like a ruin, and more like a place caught mid-breath, waiting to see what we'd do next. That night, after Duncan left, Emma and I cooked pasta on the camp stove, a feast after days of tinned soup. We ate at the stone table in the kitchen, using chipped pottery we'd found in a cupboard, and washed in icy tap water. "Dad," Emma said, "if we fix this place and people come, will we have to leave?" "No," I said. "We're part of it. We're the ones who remember the contract." She nodded, accepting this. Outside, the wind picked up, but the tarps held. The walls stood. Tomorrow, we'd contact Fiona Buchanan. Tomorrow, we'd begin the longer work of turning shelter into sanctuary. But tonight we had heat from the newly cleared fireplace, food in our bellies, and a castle that had waited 60 years for someone to remember what it was for. I pulled Emma close. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For believing we could stay." She leaned against my shoulder, and we watched the fire paint shadows on walls that had seen centuries of similar scenes. People finding warmth together, making promises in the dark, betting on the future despite impossible odds. The stones remembered. Now, so did we. Chapter 5. The map on the wall. Fiona Buchanan arrived on a motorcycle, leather jacket and gray hair whipping in the wind, carrying a satchel of paperwork that looked heavier than the bike. She was 60, sharp-featured, and wasted no time on pleasantries. "Duncan says you want to reopen Blackthorn as housing," she said, walking past me into the great hall without invitation. "Show me what you've got." I showed her. The ledgers, the photographs, the evidence of 3 centuries of intentional sanctuary. She studied everything with the focus of a barrister reviewing evidence, occasionally making notes in margins. When she reached the 1947 entries, she paused. "My grandmother was one of the Sutherland families," she said quietly. "She lived here 6 months, said it saved her life." She looked up. "So don't think I'm unmoved by the history. But history doesn't pay for building codes, compliance, or liability insurance." "What would it take?" I asked. She pulled out paperwork. "First, structural certification. You need an engineer to confirm the building is safe for occupancy. Not just won't collapse, but meets modern standards. Second, you need planning permission for change of use. The keep is currently designated a historical ruin. Converting to residential means council approval, Heritage Commission review, and neighbor consultation. Third, you need facilities. Working plumbing, heating, fire suppression, disabled access. Fourth, you need funding. The list felt crushing. How much are we talking? Conservatively, £80,000, and that's doing most of the work yourself, which you legally cannot, because you're not certified in heritage restoration. Emma, who'd been listening from the kitchen doorway, spoke up. "But people used to live here without all that." "They did," Fiona agreed. "They also died from cholera, burned to death in fires, and faced eviction without legal recourse. Modern standards exist for good reason. So what do we do?" I asked. Fiona sat down on the window seat, amid the document boxes. "You apply for grants. Historic Scotland has restoration funds. The Highland Housing Trust has emergency shelter programs. The Heritage Lottery might consider a community benefit restoration. You need to make the case that this isn't preservation for tourism. It's preservation for purpose. How long does that take? 6 to 12 months. Minimum." I thought of the 90-day condemnation notice. "I don't have that time." "Then you get creative." She pulled out a different form. "Temporary occupancy while under restoration. If you can demonstrate ongoing improvements, minimal habitability, and community benefit, the council sometimes grants interim permission. It's not a guarantee, but it's a chance." "What would that require?" "Documented progress, photographic evidence, third-party verification of safety measures." She looked around the hall. "You've got the tarps up, the chimney clear. What else?" I told her about the well, about Callum's emergency roof work, about Duncan's offer to help with carpentry. As I spoke, I realized we'd been building a case without knowing it. Every small repair, every recovered artifact, every connection with the village was evidence that the keep could be more than ruin. "You'll need allies," Fiona said. "The council responds to public opinion. If the village supports restoration, that carries weight. But you've been here, what, 2 weeks? You're still a stranger with a strange idea. How do I change that?" She smiled, thin and calculating. "You give them something they need." The village needed a meeting space. The church hall was rented to a yoga studio. The pub was too small for community gatherings. The primary school gymnasium was only available during school hours. Fiona proposed we host the next Highland Housing Trust meeting at Blackthorn, if we could make the Great Hall safe and warm enough for 30 people. I had 5 days. Callum helped shore up questionable floorboards. Duncan recruited 2 friends to repair shutters, making the arrow-slit windows weatherproof. Emma and I scrubbed flagstones, cleared debris, positioned the least damaged furniture into something resembling seating. We burned scrap wood in the fireplace, cleared now, drawing perfectly, throwing heat that penetrated even the hall's vast volume. On the 5th day, they came, 33 people, villagers and housing activists from across the Highlands, carrying folding chairs and thermoses and skeptical expressions. Fiona opened the meeting with a land acknowledgement. This was MacLeod territory, though the MacLeods had lost claim centuries ago, and then passed the floor to me. I'd prepared nothing. I'd been too busy building. "This is Blackthorn Keep," I said. "It was built to house people who needed housing. It did that for 300 years. Then we forgot, or decided it didn't matter anymore. I'm asking you to help me remember." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Then an older man in the back raised his hand. "I'm Colin Baird. My great-grandfather stayed here during the potato famine, 1880s. The keep took in 50 families that winter. He wrote about it in his memoir. I've got a copy if you want to see it." "I do," I said. A woman stood. "I'm Sarah Campbell. If you're serious about modern housing, you need wheelchair accessibility. That's not negotiable. Can this place even accommodate that?" "Not yet," I admitted. "But the courtyard entrance is ground level. We could build ramps to the main hall. The first floor would be harder but not impossible." The questions came faster. About permits, funding, timeline, safety. I answered what I could, admitted what I didn't know. Fiona filled gaps with expertise. And slowly, incrementally, the mood shifted from skeptical to curious. By the end, 6 people had volunteered skills: electrical work, plumbing assessment, grant writing help, legal research, archive digitization, and something unexpected. A woman named Margaret offered to teach basic stone masonry, saying her father had been a cathedral stonemason and she'd inherited his tools. "Stone should be maintained by people who understand it," she said. "I'll teach anyone willing to learn." The meeting ended past 10 o'clock. People lingered, examining the fireplace carvings, the graffiti names, the view from arrow slits. Colin Baird found me in the kitchen, where I was making tea for stragglers. "There's something you should see," he said. He led me to the Great Hall's north wall, the fire-damaged section we'd barely explored. My great-grandfather mentioned a map, said the old laird had carved it into the stone, showing every family who'd been sheltered here. I always thought it was metaphor, but he ran his hand across the blackened stone. Soot came away in streaks, revealing marks beneath. Not random scoring, deliberate lines, forming patterns. Names, hundreds of names, chiseled in tiny, precise script, filling the wall from floor to ceiling like a census in stone. Emma appeared with a wet rag and started cleaning beside us. More names emerged: MacLeod, Campbell, Murray, Reed, Curran, all the names from the ledgers, made permanent. And above them, carved in larger script, "These souls found shelter here. Let their names outlast the stone." Colin's eyes were wet. "My great-grandfather's name is there, James Baird. I never thought I'd see it." We spent the next hour cleaning the wall, revealing more names. The list ended in 1955, the year my grandfather left. The wall after that was blank, waiting. After everyone left, after Emma fell asleep in our makeshift bedroom in the warmest first-floor chamber, I stood in the great hall looking at the map of names. The fireplace crackled, the shadows moved, and I understood finally what my grandfather had run from: not duty but inadequacy. The weight of knowing you're supposed to maintain something bigger than yourself, more important than comfort or profit, and fearing you'll fail. He'd run. I could understand that. But running hadn't erased the keep, or the names on the wall, or the need that created both. I found a chisel in Duncan's toolbox. I carved carefully, adding the first name in 60 years, Emma Chen, below it, my own name. And beside those, in smaller script, "Return 2025, remembered the contract." The stone accepted the marks. The wall held. Tomorrow we'd photograph the map for grant applications. Tomorrow we'd begin the longer process of transformation. But tonight we'd added ourselves to the archive, the living continuing what the dead had started. The keep breathed around me, satisfied. Chapter 6. When the storm arrived. The engineer's report came back better than feared, worse than hoped. The main keep could be stabilized for £50,000, not the 80 Fiona had estimated. But there was a caveat: a subsidence crack in the foundation's northeast corner. likely caused by centuries of water runoff, was worsening. It needed immediate attention, preferably before winter weather accelerated the damage. Cost: £12,000, non-negotiable. Work to begin within 30 days or structural failure would proceed exponentially. I had £600 in my account, donated by the villagers after the Housing Trust meeting. I applied for emergency grants. Historic Scotland said 4 to 6 months for processing. The Highland Housing Trust said their funding cycle opened in March. The Heritage Lottery suggested I consider a different property, something less challenging. I called Fiona. "I'm out of options." "Not quite," she said. "There's one more route. Private fundraising. You crowdfund the foundation work, you demonstrate community investment, and suddenly those grant applications look much more viable." "How?" "You tell the story. Social media, local press, documentary evidence. You show people why this matters." I'd never posted anything online beyond job applications. Emma was more fluent. She set up accounts: Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. We filmed a 3-minute video in the Great Hall showing the walls, the names, the ledgers. I spoke to the camera like I was talking to one person because that's all I could manage. This castle sheltered people for 300 years. Now it needs shelter itself. If you believe places have memory, that buildings can hold promises worth keeping, help us save this one. We posted it with photographs of the Undercroft, the document boxes, the census wall. We tagged historical preservation groups, housing activists, heritage organizations. Then we waited. For 3 days. Nothing. Then a heritage blogger shared it. Then a journalist from the Scotsman requested an interview. Then the BBC's Highland Bureau called, asking if they could send a crew. Within a week, the fundraiser had raised £4,000. Within 2 weeks, 8,000. The engineer agreed to start work if we hit 10,000. We were close. Then Robert MacArthur arrived. He came in a Range Rover, expensive suit, Edinburgh accent smoothed over Highland vowels. He introduced himself as a property developer specializing in heritage conversions, luxury hotels, boutique retreats, high-end residential. He'd seen the video. He had a proposal. "I'll buy Blackthorn Keep," he said. £50,000 cash immediate. I'll handle the restoration, the permits, everything. You walk away with money and no stress. "It's not for sale," I said. "Everything's for sale at the right price. 75,000. "Not this." His smile didn't waver. "You're in over your head. You're what? Homeless a month ago? Now you're trying to save a medieval castle? Be realistic. Take the money. Start somewhere manageable." Emma was listening from the kitchen. I saw her face, the way she held herself perfectly still, waiting to see what I'd choose. "The keep isn't mine to sell," I said. "It belongs to everyone whose name is on that wall. I'm just the current keeper. Legally, it's yours. The deed is clear." "Legally, yes. But there are debts that don't appear in property records. I'm staying." MacArthur's expression hardened. "Then you'll fail. And when you do, I'll buy it from the council for pennies. I'm offering you a way out with dignity. Think about your daughter." "I am," I said. "That's why I'm staying." He left, but his words lingered, planting doubt. What if I did fail? What if the fundraiser stalled? The grants fell through. The foundation collapsed. What if my insistence on honor destroyed the one chance Emma had at stability? That night, the storm arrived. It came from the northwest, the kind of Atlantic gale the Highlands experience a few times each winter. Wind that stripped slates from roofs, bent trees double, turned rain into horizontal daggers. We'd prepared, secured shutters, reinforced tarps, moved everything valuable to the driest rooms. But preparation meant little against 100-mile-an-hour gusts. The first shutter tore free at midnight. The sound was a gunshot, wood splintering. I ran to the window, found it open, rain pouring through. I fought the shutter back into place, used rope to tie it, got drenched. 2 more shutters failed in the next hour. The tarp over the west wing ripped, flapping like a sail until it tore completely away. Water cascaded through the damaged roof section we hadn't yet repaired. Emma and I worked in shifts, securing what we could, moving supplies away from leaks, placing buckets under new drips. The Great Hall became a maze of collection points, rain drumming into metal and pottery. The Undercroft stayed dry, the one Mercy, but the first-floor chambers flooded, water running down walls, soaking the century-old plaster. At 3 a.m. I heard a sound like thunder, but continuous. I ran to the kitchen, found water pouring through the ceiling where the roof join met the turret. Not a leak, a breach. The structural crack the engineer had warned about. stressed by wind pressure and rain saturation, widening. Duncan arrived at dawn, soaked and grim. The village lost power, 3 roofs gone. But when I saw the keep still standing, I thought you might need help. Together, we rigged emergency bracing using timbers Callum had left behind. It wasn't engineering. It was hope and physics and desperation. But it held. The cracks stopped widening. The water slowed to a trickable stream we could contain. By noon, the storm had passed. The damage assessment took hours. 4 shutters destroyed, the west wing roof section completely exposed, 3 first-floor chambers uninhabitable from water damage, and the foundation crack now visibly worse. The engineer's 30-day deadline felt impossibly optimistic. The fundraiser had stalled at £9,200. We needed £10,000 to start work, $12,000 to complete it. And now we had additional damage to repair, costs compounding. Emma found me sitting in the great hall staring at buckets still catching drips. She sat beside me saying nothing. After a long while she spoke. "In the letters," she said. "The ones people sent asking for help. They didn't know if they'd be accepted, but they asked anyway." "Yeah," I said. "Are we asking?" I realized we hadn't. Not really. We'd told the story, documented the history, made the case for preservation, but we hadn't looked at the camera and said, "We need help. We're failing. Please." That afternoon, Emma filmed me again. This time I didn't script it. The storm damaged the keep worse than we thought. We're £800 short of starting foundation repairs, and we need them now. Not next month, not when grants come through. Now. If you've been watching this story, if you believe buildings can be promises, this is the moment. Help us keep that promise. We posted it with images of the damage, the buckets, the exposed stone. Within 6 hours, we hit 10,000. By midnight, 12,000. By morning, 16,000. Enough to repair the foundation and address some storm damage. The comments were overwhelming. People sharing their own stories of shelter, of places that had saved them, of believing something mattered enough to fight for it. Someone in Edinburgh sent power tools. Someone in Glasgow sent materials. A masonry company in Aberdeen offered discounted labor. The village organized a work party. On the morning the foundation crew arrived, 43 people showed up to help. They cleared debris, hauled stone, prepared the site. Margaret taught stone repair basics, showing volunteers how to mix mortar the old way, how to read the wall's language. Colin Baird brought more documents from his family archive. Fiona coordinated logistics, turning chaos into choreography. The keep filled with voices, with laughter, with the sound of work. For the first time since we'd arrived, it felt like what it had been, a place that held people together. Robert MacArthur drove past that afternoon. He slowed, watching the work party, the community building itself back into the stone. Then he drove on without stopping. That night, exhausted and sore, Emma and I sat by the fire. The foundation was secure. The immediate crisis had passed. But we'd learned the pattern now. There would always be another storm, another crack, another moment of choosing between walking away and digging deeper.